I'm honored to have been selected for this most prestigious award. Reading the letters of support and congratulatory notes from my faculty colleagues, former students, and fellow researchers has been emotionally overwhelming. The fact that Associate Dean Chamberlain spearheaded my nomination is particularly gratifying. I have followed her stellar academic career with quasi-parental pride as she progressed from a student to co-author, colleague, productive tort scholar, and now my Associate Dean. I've been at the Faculty of Law for 41 years, spanning 5 decades. By my calculation, that gives me 2 minutes a decade to talk about my work. Some would say that it's more than ample time for the task. Well, I'm not going to talk directly about my career, but rather why I'm still here after all this time. It is not because I'm allergic to fun, as one of my perceptive colleagues has suggested. His quip is just another example of legal academics confusing correlation and causation, something that happens far too often. I've remained an academic simply because there's no other place I would rather be and no other work I would rather do. Immersed in the workaday tasks of academia, it is easy to lose sight of what a privileged career we pursue. This wonderful award and my approaching retirement has made me reflect on what I cherish most about my life as an academic. 4 things come to mind. First, as academics, we live and work in the world of ideas, ideas of our own choosing. I read, study, and write about what sparks my intellectual interests. I don't have to consider billable hours, corporate budgets, political expediency, or public image. I've had the luxury of spending 4 decades following my meandering intellectual interests. As an academic, I've been supported to work in fields and on research about which I care very deeply. Secondly, I am free to exercise critical judgments and express my views regardless of who I might offend. My research in recent years has focused on the role of law in minimizing impairment-related crash deaths in Canada. Unfortunately, Canada has followed the dubious lead of the United States in demonizing illicit drugs and largely ignoring the greater harms caused by alcohol and, for that matter, tobacco. This approach has not only squandered scarce enforcement resources on failed policies, it has perpetuated the myth that alcohol is a relatively benign drug. Tragically, this myth takes a devastating toll on young people, who are dramatically overrepresented in virtually every category of alcohol-related trauma death, from pedestrians, passenger, and driver fatalities to suicides and drownings. Another result of this policy is that impairment-related crashes remain Canada's #1 criminal cause of death, claiming twice as many lives per year as all homicides combined. Canada's traffic record in this regard is abysmal by international standards. Consequently, in my repeated appearances before the House of Commons Standing Committee on Justice and my meetings with the last 5 federal attorney generals and other leading parliamentarians, I haven't been able to fill those discussions with polite calls for more dialogue, networking, and awareness. Rather, it is incumbent upon me to inform our political masters in blunt terms that our poor record is attributable to their failure to enact effective laws. Laws that have long since proven effective in dramatically reducing alcohol-related crash deaths in Australia, New Zealand, Japan, the UK, and Western and Eastern Europe. Where else but in academia would I, as a lawyer, be supported to undertake this kind of research? Where else would I be free to publicly criticize government policy? Certainly not in government, nor in the private practice of law. And sadly, in recent years, not in many agencies and NGOs that are funded in whole or in part by the government. Third, my career has given me the opportunity to try and make a positive difference in the world. There is a Hebrew expression, tikkun olam, which means to heal or repair the world. The moral imperative does not require success, but rather effort. While many people do this on a part-time volunteer basis, I get to do this as part of my job. Let me first state that my fair share of research, particularly in the fields of illicit drug policy, have been completely ignored. Indeed, one article I co-authored with Professor Usbridge so pleased the government that there were discussions about charging me with contempt of Parliament, which, by the way, accurately summed up my view of that august body at that time. It hasn't changed since. Fortunately, other research efforts have generated a more favorable response, hastening, prompting, and in some cases directly resulting in progressive policies and legislation. These areas of research include work on needle exchange programs, secondary school alcohol and tobacco policies, alcohol-related liability, the development of server and management training programs, and most significantly, the ongoing reform of the federal and provincial impaired driving laws. The research and advocacy work which Associate Dean Chamberlain and I have done over the last 13 years in convincing provincial and territorial governments to enact comprehensive graduated licensing programs for young drivers has been the most rewarding. It has been very gratifying to know that we have played a role in significantly reducing traffic fatalities among this vulnerable constituency. Yet, despite our efforts and those of many others, 15 to 25-year-olds in Canada constitute about 13% of the population, but account for approximately 33% of the alcohol-related traffic deaths. Clearly, our work is far from done. Nevertheless, where else but in academia would we have the opportunity to pursue our vision of making the world a better place? Fourth, as an academic, my workday is filled with an endless flood of enthusiastic and idealistic young people. I get to share with them my knowledge, skills, and views on issues which are important to me. Along the way, I provide an occasional academic push, pat on the back, or needed vote of confidence. As faculty, we are uniquely situated to participate in our students' intellectual development during this formative period in their lives. To this day, I remember with fondness those committed teachers who made a difference in my life. What was inspiring was not their technical teaching skills, but rather their passion for their research and teaching and their personal commitment to their students. In my experience, the work and emotional energy that I've put into my students has been repaid by them many times over. Sadly, as is readily apparent to even a casual observer, being surrounded by young people has not kept me young. While my eyes have dimmed and my hair has turned gray and my hearing has become dodgy, my enthusiasm for teaching has not waned. I enjoy teaching and my interactions with my students now as much or more than I did when I started 41 years ago. I would be remiss not to acknowledge how I got to be here today. I've had the good fortune to have worked with talented colleagues and co-authors over the years, some of whom still speak to me. No. Among my colleagues and co-authors are Professor Vingillis and O'Reilly of the School of Medicine and Dentistry, Professors Hovius, Costel, and Usbridge of the Faculty of Law. More recently, I've collaborated with Professors Patel and Chamberlain on a series of traffic safety projects and publications. They have all showed remarkable restraint in calmly responding to my random use of commas, endless series of suggested revisions of diminishing value, and other less than endearing foibles. My research would not have resulted in legislative change but for the special relationship that I've had with Mad Canada. I ensure that Mad Canada's policies are based on the best available traffic safety research and legal analysis, and it attempts to generate the political will necessary to transform that work into legislative change. Finally, most of my family are here today, and to them I owe the greatest debt of gratitude for their support throughout my career and for being far more patient than I deserve. My wife, Dr. Barbara Lent, a professor and former associate dean in the School of Medicine and Dentistry, has been an invaluable sounding board and an astute critic and gentle editor. Moreover, she has succeeded in keeping me on track when my indignation and frustration would have otherwise gotten the best of me. In closing, I think it is only fair to reassure my dean, Ian Scott, that as much as I love this job, Ian, I will retire. But not just yet. Thank you. Thank you.